Today's date is March 4th, 2020. Notice has been duly posted. And we'll start with item number 1, roll call. Alder Dan Stevens, myself, present. Alder Jim Olson.
Present.
Alder Diane Wolf.
Present.
I'll go through the whole thing again. Also present, City Administrator Eric Reinflesh. Hope from HR. Fred from Finance. Alder Tom Smith. Chief Ashbeck, Chief Hayes, City Planner Katie Espenson, Gerald Holter, the City Attorney Amanda Jackson, and Her Honor the Mayor, and Dan Wick from Parks and Rec is here. And also Jared is in the back. Hey, Jared.
Hey, Jared.
All right, item 2, approval of minutes from previous meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Olson, second by Dan Wolf. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Item 3, public input. Anybody wishing to provide public input, please address the podium. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Second call for public input. Third and final call for public input. Hearing no public input is now closed. Consideration and possible action on the following items. Item 4, the Omni Center financials. Take it away, Fred.
Okay, both numbers 4 and 5 are going to be fairly short. For the main reason is a lot of the bills that come in are bills that were posted and paid in 2019 business. We'll be just starting to pay the bills now. With that said, the Omni Center doesn't receive any room tax dollars from the tourism department until after 2 months have passed, and so that won't be starting till next month. So with that said, on page 2, you'll see there's a deficit in the Omni Center of $24,838.12. Not a whole lot to say other than nothing started yet.
All right, so we'll just have to wait another month. So, what do we want to do with the Omni Center financials?
Motion to approve the 2020 Omni Center financials.
Second.
Motion by Diane, second by Jim to approve the 2020 Omni Center financials. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Omni Center financials are approved. Moving on to item 5, the general fund financials. Fred.
Similar situation with the general fund. There isn't a whole lot of activity, more expenditures than there is revenue coming in. We received $479,000 and we spent $1.1 million. But that's what's kind of skewed a little bit, because if I was to have reported 2/12 of the tax levy, then it would be to a positive. So other than that, not a whole lot, unless you have any questions for me.
I move that we accept the 2020 general fund financials.
Second.
Motion by Diane, second by Jim to accept the 2020 general fund financials. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the financials, please say aye.
Aye.
Financials are accepted. Item 6, authorization to set aside $20,000 annually in a depreciation fund for the stormwater utility with a maximum cap of $400,000.
Okay, F6 in your attachment, one of the final passes or final things I needed to do, you had to 2019, and this is the outcome, is anytime you do mortgage revenue bond issues, last year you may recall we did a water and sewer mortgage revenue bond issue for a little over $8 million, and then we did, I think it was roughly 500 and some thousand, wasn't it, Jared, for stormwater? I'm just drawing a blank right now. But anyway, the mortgage revenue bond requirements under the bond covenants of those water and sewer stormwater, as well as the water and sewer mortgage revenue and the stormwater mortgage revenue, there are 3 components that must happen and they must comply with. And I want to just briefly, we're going to focus tonight mainly on number 1, but I wanted to briefly go through all 3 of them. It is required, and when the council passed this resolution back when we did the stormwater and general fund bonding, the resolution that the council passed was somewhat silent. Normally, they would list the exact dollar amount to be set aside annually. This one was silent, and talking to bond counsel, Bridget Keating says that the council can set a figure. And so the figure that you see there of $20,000 annually is very similar to the water and sewer. Water department, I believe, has $25,000 set aside, maximum of $475. The sewer has $20,000 set aside, maximum of $400. And so that is how we somewhat established the $20,000 annually on number one. Number two is a special, then that's called the depreciation fund. And those dollars are set aside for, how should I say, something that may come up as an emergency for the stormwater utility. Item number two is what they call a special redemption fund. Special redemption fund, if you take a look just a little bit below, right before the line that comes across about halfway in the middle of the page, you'll see that's the principal and interest payment for 2020. And that is, as of 12/31/2019, those dollars have been set aside. So by the time these payments are to be come due, whether it's interest that's twice a year or the principal that's once a year, there'll be adequate dollars in the special redemption fund to make the payment. Item number three is a reserve requirement. And what that is, it states, just like it states, there's three components, A, B, and C. And it's a least amount of the three options. 10% of the principal proceeds, or its maximum annual debt service on the 2019 bonds, which is the stormwater mortgage revenue bonds, or 125% of the average annual debt. And so what I've done showing A, B, and C, A is that's the outcome of $221,500, which is 10% of the dollars that we borrowed for the stormwater, that is. And then the number two is the maximum annual debt service, which is $154,063. And number three is 125% of the average annual debt service. And the lower of the three is letter B, which is $154,063. That money will be set in this account called the reserve account until I believe these bonds go to 2025. So it'll be there for a while. And then on the back side of F6, that is the recap of what I just told you based on my calculations as well as Baird, coming up with the same answers, letter A, B, and C. So any questions on that? So the one we're after tonight is numbers 2 and 3 are pretty much set aside by the way the methodology works. Number 1 is takes this committee and council to set aside, and I'm using $20,000. Similar, I feel this stormwater and sewer are fairly similar in nature, so that's how I established, and we took the $20,000.
Thank you, Fred. Could you talk maybe about the nature of the $20,000 per year for the stormwater is that essentially goes into an account, and in the case of an emergency with stormwater that pops up that we don't have budgeted for, then engineering can make use of it, and then do we have to replenish that in the following year, or?
Yeah, what it amounts to is every year we put aside, the way this has been set up for the water and sewer over the years, is every year until it reaches that maximum threshold. Once it reaches the threshold, then it stays there. But if I believe one or twice, I think in the water and sewer, something came up where the city had, through Board of Public Works, had tapped into the dollars, and then of course, when you put aside 20 or 25,000 annually, once it gets back up to the threshold or maximum of 400 or 425, then it sits there, and then no more dollars is set aside.
Okay. Eric, did you?
Utility, to some degree, has reserves. Items 2 and 3, as you heard Fred say, are cash on hand. And I guess to specifically answer that question, In setting rates for utilities, depreciation is a non-cash expense that you account for your rates. However, since we have debt issued against the utility, providing revenue in, what the covenants say for our bondholders is that we will have a reserve so that, if, as you point out, emergency does arise, we don't have to borrow additional money to cover those expenses. We have a reserve on hand for those expenses, therefore not putting their own debts at risk or the health of the utility at risk. So basically, you're taking that non-cash expense and making it a cash expense until you build up the maximum reserve as required.
My business, we call that a loan loss reserve account, but yes. Any other questions? All right, we're on item number 6.
Did we do that? Oh, no. We are on number 6.
We are on number 6.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought you were moving on. So you were looking for a motion?
I am looking for a motion.
Thank you. Okay, I will move that we authorize to set aside $20,000 annually in a depreciation fund for the stormwater utility with a maximum cap of $400,000.
Motion by Alder Diane Wolf, second by Alder Jim Olson to authorize $20,000 annually in a depreciation fund for the stormwater utility with a maximum cap of $400,000. Any discussion? Fred, the funds for this will come from the stormwater fees, or does this come from our levy?
Stormwater fund balance,
Thank you.
with the exception of number 3. Number 3, when the funds were received by the city, that was the dollars that we received, and it was called the debt service reserve back then.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. We'll close out the finance section, move over to personnel. Item 7, Resolution 18-2020, authorization to allow for the replacement of full-time vacant budgeted positions without committee approval, provided the grade and essential job functions do not change, and Human Resources provides a monthly update on staffing. I know that last year, we had through the end of the year, we had an update on police and fire specific positions that would become available, with the idea that we wanted to make it more efficient, that HR could just go ahead and fill positions that were emergency, vital in an emergency sense to the city. So we're glad to see this on here. I noticed that the resolution, the wording maybe was a little bit different than how it's listed on the agenda. So I guess I just started talking. So how about we start with a motion, and then maybe we can bring this to discussion. Or, Hope, do you want to throw anything on this first? Any commentary?
Well, I know in July of last year, we had made a request to council to have all police, fire, sergeants, and lieutenant positions filled automatically because we didn't want to delay in hiring to cause issues with filling those positions. And so kind of the catch-all with if we have budgeted positions in the budget already, to kind of carry that over with all positions, with the caveat that if there is any major job description changes, which typically if there's essential job function changes, or something that's going to change the grade, that those would have to come to the council for approval, because that's going to change something significantly, that we would need approval for the council. And so we're saying that other than those types of changes, that we would bring that back to the council. But essentially what we're asking for is if we already have it budgeted, rather than having to wait for council approval to come back, because for example, what happens oftentimes is after we get through our committee process is I might have a resignation right after the council meeting, And unless I hold a special meeting, I have to wait till the next month's meeting to actually request to get it filled. And so that might delay that department's ability to find staff and even take longer to get assistance. And for some departments, that's not a big deal, but for other departments, it could be a big deal. And it depends on the department, it depends on the number of staff, and depends on the tasks that are being done, and the size of the department. So I think the intent of what we had put kind of together here, and I think Amanda put the resolution together with the idea that having the resolution would help assist us in finding, where do we have this information? But I think the intent is still the same. If we're making major changes or making grade changes, that it comes back to the council. Ultimately, the council has to make those changes because those weren't budgeted, and those changes have to be approved by the council. But if they're already budgeted positions that the council's approved through the budget process, then we're just requesting that those positions get filled. And then we don't have to bring them back every time. And that's similar to police, fire, and those types of positions. So like I said, unless there's major changes, and in which case, if there's a reorg or if there's any major changes in the job description, they will come back to the council for approval because we are planning on making major changes. So I'm hoping that maybe alleviates any concerns that you might have.
Before I speak, does anybody else want to weigh in?
Could we have a motion on the floor?
No, we do not.
No, or I'm sorry. I'm asking, could we have a motion on the floor?
All right. All right, I am going to make a motion that we approve Resolution 18-2020 with an amendment that we strike the word major, so the final phrase in the resolution will read, "Now therefore be it resolved that where no changes to the essential job functions and pay grade exist, and where the position has been budgeted and funded, city staff shall be authorized to fill vacancies as needed, and that a monthly report shall be provided related to vacancies and hiring within the city at the monthly Finance and Personnel Committee meeting." That is my motion. Motion by myself, Dan Stevens, second by Jim, to approve the resolution with the amendment striking the word major from the last phrase, paragraph of the resolution. Any discussion? Amanda. I picked Amanda first.
I didn't see, sorry.
I guess my only hesitation would be that sometimes we update job descriptions simply to update the language of the technology software we use to we're not making a major change to the essential job function, but we're, updating a procedure to what it currently is. Maybe it's changed. And so I guess if we can't make any changes, then we're getting back to coming back and having you approve what could be a 2-word change that has really no bearing on the actual job duties themselves. But because we're making a change now, we have to bring it back. I guess that's my only concern with removing the major.
Eric?
Going back to councils and boards with mid-year hiring replacements, in my experience, is relatively common. But the purpose for it, especially for currently budgeted items, budgeted positions, is the ability for the council to make substantial changes to the organization, staffing, look for efficiencies, downsize, what have you, during the year. And so if a vacancy occurs, it's the opportunity to say, well, do we really need to fill that position or do we not need to fill that position? That is a policy decision, and I strongly support those decisions coming back to council. If we're looking at any change in pay, change in major duties, or a reorg, that aspect. Those communities that it generally goes back to the council all generally have in one common that they do not have an administrator. Again, the administrator position reports directly to council. part of my annual review is get guidance by the council in terms of, in this particular year, are there efficiencies, are there ways of reorganizing? And so any opportunities as they present themselves, this will not preclude that from occurring. Of say, no, this is a reorg, this is a substantial position change. Here's our opportunity to put forth the council's agenda and goals and prepare a plan that comes back to the council to do so. In the absence of that, we are effectively continuing the practice that we've had in the past, which again, to change or not to change is a policy decision completely in the council's hands, of all decisions coming back to the council at all times. If that is the desire of the council, that is acceptable. That does not improve efficiency, however, to fill the existing positions as they stand. To Amanda's point there, something that does not affect where a position would score could be the type of technology used, or if there are required changes in positions. For example, we have most of our positions say requires a driver's license. Is that accurate statement or not? Do they require a driver's license? The opportunity arises as the position opens up. We need to make a change. We can make that change on a staff level without coming to the council, waiting that cycle to come back to say, well, here's an option that we have no choice to require because the position does not require a driver's license, yet we're going to do so, therefore restricting the ability of people to take that job. Those are, in my mind, changes that can be made administratively that doesn't necessarily have to come back and take up the time of the council.
Any other comments?
So if we're going to change the way we normally do business with this way, so in order to go back to question some things, would need council approval to do so, correct?
Council can question anything at any time. All right, but my expectations for what this council is looking for is if there are opportunities to become more efficient or downsize, that's the opportunity of the council on setting goals for that year. You know, I'm responsible for doing so. If we simply fill positions and miss that opportunity, that's on the administrator's shoulders then.
Diane?
Thank you, Chairman. So I guess I'd like to kind of briefly recap how we got here. And if I'm incorrect anywhere along the way, I have no problem someone correcting me. So I know I wasn't on F&P at the time, but the motion was actually done at council. And thank you, Eric and Hope, for providing me because I didn't know where it came, because July was a long time ago when this passed. So forgive me. So I know in July 2019 at council, then Alderperson Kim Smith was representing F&P to approve authorization to fill any vacant police officer, sergeant, lieutenant, firefighter, blah, 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 budgeted positions for 2019 that may come up between now and the end of 2019. And she reflected that the motion at F&P was to simply fill a simple vacancy, but after further review and discussion with HR, it was decided to expand this. And I was totally on board I felt that it was council's position, at least it was my position, to aid in the efficiency for HR and for staff to go ahead and fill those positions expediently, especially with fire, due to the staffing situations that we had last year and we have to this day. And I will continue to advocate for that very strongly, because I think we need to continue doing that and remove whatever barriers we need to, so you can do your job and so we can keep as much staffed as we can. And I will continue to advocate for that. But I will say that I was surprised at the February F&P meeting when I asked about that the for information only wasn't on the January F&P and it then wasn't on the February, and I felt uncomfortable because it wasn't on the agenda, but I felt the need to say, well, where is it? And that's when Hope reported that because you gave that approval, I gave the reports, but that ended at the end of the year. Now any position would have to come back to the council to get filled. And I apologize, like I said, it was last July. I didn't know that I didn't remember that it was going to expire. I just didn't know. And I think I made the mistake, and once again, I do apologize. I didn't realize, I inadvertently assumed, and we know what assume stands for, but I assumed that, I guess in a perfect world, what I would have liked to have seen is, and maybe going forward, this is something that I would suggest, if something like that is going, and I don't know what the current protocol is for staff for something like this, whether it's in engineering or planning or HR or anyone, is if a policy or if a vote is taken and council has decided we're going to go ahead and we're going to try like for the end of the year, I guess I mistakenly assumed that maybe Hope or whoever would have then maybe gone to the F&P chair like the end of December and said, oh, by the way, this has lapsed now by the end of the year per the motion in July, and maybe you represent, if it really was working, this has really been working, and would you consider putting it on the F&P agenda since he chairs it and he has I believe the capacity to go ahead and say, yes, put it on the agenda, we'd like to go ahead, and I think, F&P would like to revisit that again going forward for 2020. Because I personally would really like to be able to do that again. So that's kind of where I'm at. Like I said, in a perfect world, that's what I would have liked to have seen. And going forward, if something is going to lapse, I would like to think that instead of we having to remember that, I don't think it's my job to have to remember that something's going to lapse. So, because I want to make your job easier. So I think that's what I would have liked to have seen, looking back on it. We could all say, well, this is so that's what I would like to have seen. So going forward, that's what I would like to see. I personally do not feel comfortable with the resolution for a number of reasons. We all know that as elected officials, we are not supposed to talk as a committee members, with the whole walking quorums and such. We can't talk about how we feel about this or about anything. So this is where we come together here and talk publicly, openly, very transparently how we feel about these things and at council. And so I don't know if Jim or Dan is thinking about the possibility of a reorg, or do we need a position, and when those positions come before us, then we as a group can talk about those. Or if we have a different idea or something, or maybe we haven't had a chance to talk to Eric to talk about something that has come up. So while I personally feel very strongly that I want to empower HR to continue doing what we did last year from July through the end of the year, I would like to continue that for 2020 if the rest of F&P and if council were to agree. But I personally do not feel comfortable moving forward for all employee vacancies. I think as long as I've been here, past councils have always been very open to, if there's ever a position that comes open, that HR feels strongly that depending upon what the position is and the pressing need for it to be filled more immediately than the next council cycle, I will always advocate for, I am fine having a special common council meeting, because that's what we're here for. If you feel that there's that need, I, for one, will say, yeah, we need to meet. And I will defend you on that if you feel the need to meet. So if someone can convince me otherwise tonight why I should support this, I am certainly willing to listen. But I just don't feel comfortable with council's capacity to oversee this being taken away from us. So that's what.
Make a statement and then go to Amanda. So maybe I want to clarify why I was requesting the change in the with the amendment. My goal is to make it as easy as possible for Hope to fill positions that were already budgeted for, where we know what the positions are and we know that we're going to fill them. I don't think that there's very many instances where we had a position that became vacant and then HR came to council and then we didn't refill that position. I guess that could happen. But my concern is that I don't want to cede council's ability to oversee any changes. And so by having the word major in there, that brings some concerns. I think that can be subjective. Who's defining what a major change is? What's major to me might be very different and not major to Eric. And if you have very small minor changes that happen over a period of time, that could equate to a single major change. So if, in my view, if the position is where there's like no change and we're budgeted for it, then I think it's easiest, not just police and fire, but any position, that we should just fill it because that's a more efficient process for us to conduct city business. If there is something where it's appropriate to have a change in the job description or anything that would require a change, I mean, I can't imagine that it would be an emergency position where we need to fill it and we need to make a change within that 30-day period. I think that it would be appropriate, if there is any changes, that we send that back to F&P. If there's no changes, fill the position to the best of your ability as quickly as you can. So, again, to recap, I want to make it as easy as possible for HR to start the hiring process, but if there's any changes to the job description, I'm not comfortable with council ceding that ability. So that's where I was coming from with that change. That said, with the amendment, I'm comfortable with it and am likely to support it. So, Amanda, you were next.
Okay, I just want to touch on a few points. I don't necessarily have the same background in the history, but I did want to highlight that one of the reasons I had it be a resolution is because I think they're easier to track. Sometimes when we have motions, we don't always remember the exact motion or whether it expired or what the intent was, and so then we're digging through trying to remember what meeting that motion was made at, going back, trying to take the context of that evening, and remember what exactly happened. And so I did want it to be a resolution just because they're a little bit easier to keep track of and we're all on the same page and we have a document that we can refer to in the future should we ever need to decide what was talked about here tonight. Secondly, I guess just from not the HR perspective, I have an opening in the city attorney's department right now, and I can tell you I am really behind on municipal court responses. And so I feel the pain of having a vacancy right now in that sense. And that was a job description that had very, very minor changes, probably could have gone through without having any changes. And I could be 3 weeks ahead in the hiring process right now if I hadn't had to come to council. And so I don't know that it's entirely just about hope, but just those of us who have staff that we rely on to help make city business flow easier. I think sometimes we are unnecessarily delaying the process by having this requirement. And so I guess one compromise I would urge you to consider if you're really leaning towards not approving this would be to at the least consider allowing us to post the job pending council approval. Because I really do think this affects a lot of departments, especially police and fire, but really any department that has people that they rely on and that citizens rely on. I did do some due diligence and research and reach out. This is really common. So I reached out to the legal community to see what most cities do, and the vast majority of cities do not require any approvals for budgeted positions, which is part of why I supported this. So I just wanted to give a little bit of my history on it.
Jim.
Yeah, it's always nice that when we're discussing something like this and I'm listening to everybody's view, I'm kind of impatient, so it would be nice if we could come to something clearer in about 5 minutes instead of 30. But that's not going to happen. So I just have one comment to make on this. I'm really not taking an issue with this per se, but I want to remind everybody who's an employee here that whatever decisions we make here as a common council, we are responsible for, and we're responsible for the taxpayer at a higher level than any staff is, in my opinion. So when we make changes, we all agree on them, please keep that in mind because we're going to catch the flack if it's not right much faster than any of you sitting out there. That's my concern. Okay, so we do the right thing, and I don't have a problem with that right thing being something different, as long as it's efficient and it's working okay. That's fine. So, thank you.
All right, so I guess we have a motion on the floor with the amendment. I just kind of want to maybe clarify what our options are. From the sound of the discussion, Diane was preferring the system of what we did last year, with the caveat that at the end of the year, if something were expiring, council would be appraised of that, and if we wanted to make it on the agenda for the following year, then the chair can bring that up. I will support this resolution with my amendment on there for the reasons that I cited. Jim, well, I guess you'll be a surprise. You're suggesting, like, are you okay with, from a legal standpoint, the resolution with the amendment, or are you preferring that we just allow the resolution to post?
I guess from an efficiency standpoint, if we're going to have to bring really minor changes, I would almost advocate for allowing us to post the position and then bringing the change forward for approval.
Billy?
I'm not going to speak on behalf of the police chief, but I'll speak on behalf of the fire department. And I understand what Mr. Olson, you said you're held at a higher accountability level, as are we. You pay us an amount to be your department heads to serve in a position to make decisions that are best for the city, which go through HR. If there are no changes that can be made to a job description before we can move forward with anything, it enables us to not do anything. So if there is any type of change, there may be a new certification that comes out with police, certification with fire, and if it delays us 30 days to make any type of posting to where we can hire somebody, especially in our positions to where we're behind most of the time because of a slight change in a job description, it really disables us, and it kind of undermines us as department heads to be able to make the decisions you pay us for. So we would not do anything as department heads, at least speaking on my behalf, that would undermine the organization, the city, that would put us in a position to where a simple job description would hurt us. Nor would we want to disable our organization to be moving forward with staffing because we're waiting for a simple word change, certification label, name, or whatever it may be, just for something like that. So just wanted to bring that up.
Somebody else had their hand up? I guess I'd like to respond. To contrast, like the old way of doing things is whenever there was a position that became vacant, it had to wait. HR would have to wait until council approved the hiring of it. So the variance here is we don't have to wait unless, as long as everything stays the same. If there is a change that happens at any point, we can, the F&P can still change that. We just want to retain the ability to control what is being changed, because if we see this is kind of going forward. This isn't just for this year. This is how the city will hire going forward. And I think that's an awful lot of, I think council, we're giving up the will of the people to really dictate what those changes are. And I'm not over the what's major to me might be major to somebody else, or little changes over a big period of many little changes could become large ones, and I'm not comfortable with council just ceding that. But in cases where nothing is different, then we should be able to expedite that process. And in cases where there are changes, I mean, we still have the process where those changes can be brought before F&P, and you know, if they're major or they're minor, council can decide at that time. So I guess that's my thought.
Two hands up.
Who was first? We'll let Hope go first. Just 'cause she's to my left. We don't,
I noticed it, right?
gender doesn't,
Very good.
In my 20-plus years of experience in human resources, I'm going to pull that card. I have done many of job description, and I can't tell you a time that we have not made a job description change, minor or otherwise. And what I'm telling you is I can't tell you a time that I've ever lied to this council or any group of people. When we have a minor change to a job description, it is a minor change. It is wordsmithing things, it is sometimes adjusting periods, commas, combining some of the language in there so that it actually makes sense. Because sometimes the job descriptions, well, they might look good 5 years ago, they don't look good anymore. Things change. And so things like even what we need now, things like Word, Excel, Access, databases, things like that. Programs are different. And so what we need from those things, we don't necessarily need somebody to be good at something. We might say they need to be proficient. They need to be an expert. And so some of those are just minor changes. They're not going to change the scoring for that position, and that's what we mean by major changes to the grade or essential job functions. And so when I'm saying, when Amanda put this together and we were talking about it, when we were talking about major job functions or grade changes, that's what we're talking about, is if it's going to affect the pay or a major job function or essential job function, that means there's something major that's changing in that job description that would impact their pay or grade. And so that's what we don't want to have happen, is we don't want to take in front of this council or try to slide behind the group. And what is in the budget has the pay, has the grade, and if it's not what's in that budget, we are not going to just slide something behind you. We are going to bring something in front of you that has all of those changes in there. And so I'm trying to be as respectful as I possibly can, but department heads spend a lot of time and effort. We've got a lot to do, and I know right now I'm buried. So trying to get recruitment done, trying to get it posted and advertised. We've got positions all over the place right now that we're recruiting for. This would save me an incredible amount of time to not have to take it to council. And I think even just the minor changes, like what we had for Amanda's position for the administrative assistant paralegal, they were very minor changes. I know for you guys, you do report to the citizens, and I highly respect that, because I feel I report to the citizens as well, and I would not do something that I felt was not in their interest. But I'm also not going to do something that I don't feel that's going to make you look bad, because I'm working for the citizens, I'm working for the council, I'm working for Eric. And so this is where my expertise is in, and I am respectfully asking that I understand it's change, and change is hard. We're not asking for positions that if you have a feeling where you don't think that position should be filled, that's a discussion that we need to have prior to that, but that's where some of these updates come in, where I have the update for the position, and if you have, before council comes through, if you're like, I don't think we should fill that, that's a discussion that you have with the city administrator. But I think those are things that we can have open and honest discussion about. But I really think if we need to tweak the wording in the resolution, then let's come up with some better wording in there that maybe appeases what you're looking for. If you're not liking the major changes, then let's come up with some wording that appeases that so that you're more comfortable to come up with some sort of at least resolution.
Eric, To my left, Eric goes.
To echo what Hope had said, I was going to mention, she got me by 20-some years, but in my almost 3 years here, there hasn't yet been any position that has come up for vacancy that the first thing we haven't done is look at the position to see any changes. And sometimes, to use the term major or minor, they're minor. Sometimes they turn to be major. They lead to perhaps other opportunities. But that's the first thing that we look at is the job description before we replace it every time. Hasn't happened yet that we haven't done so. And quite frankly, I don't think there's been a chance yet where we haven't made some kind of change that then when the council approves the hiring of that position, you're also approving those changes in that position description. Perhaps offering some insight as to what major change that attention there, of that phrase is. The positions themselves are graded, and especially as we go through the comp and class study that is coming up, it is the position description that dictates where that position grades out. And so we have a grade and we have a step program, right? So some of those items, the criteria that each position grades out is experience necessary, number of years, for example, education required to apply for the position, certifications required, but also things like amount of danger someone faced, amount of time inside versus outside, technology used, and people, number of people that report to you if that changes. All of which those items I just listed could potentially lead to a grade change. So all those items I just listed to you could potentially still, under the major changes, lead to going to council approval because that could potentially lead to a grade change. And that grade change then is a change in what is your policy document, the annual budget. And so when we're talking about major changes, it's a broader scope than perhaps what you're thinking. It's not simply, oh, we're going to take a one position at a grade 12 and make it a grade 22. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that any change that will impact that position, because where it scores in a grade will have a budgetary impact to you. So anything outside of that very broad scope, which really does include lots of major items, will not impact where that position ends up on on the pay grade. And that's what the staff and myself are requesting from the council, is through the policy document, the annual budgets, if we're meeting those guidelines that we have, there's been no changes that we recommend to the position description that would impact where that position ends up in a grade, which impacts the organization and impacts wages and benefits paid out. That we're able to move forward with that position description, make those changes, or, as Amanda pointed out, perhaps another way of doing it is allowing us to post with those new changes subject to approval to move forward with that. So I think I think sometimes we're hung up on right now what major means. Anything that would impact your policy document becomes major. Anything that doesn't impact your policy document is something that I would say is administrative. To change, to stay up on the times, correct perhaps clerical errors or what have you in the document itself, that would not impact what the guidelines that the council has given staff through your policy document.
Thank you. And thank you, Chief Hayes and Eric and Hope, for all your comments. And certainly, and thank you, Hope, also for your finer definition of the minor major. For me, that gave me a lot greater comfort level. And I certainly back you up when you talk about, I've seen the many job descriptions through the years where, has there ever been one where there wasn't? Because so many times you're simply reformatting things, where you're trying to bring, after so many years, you bring everything back into, as job descriptions cross your desk, you reformat them so they all have the same tenor and such. So it's literally impossible to have one identical. So I would have a great comfort level with the word post. Now, when you talk about if the resolution passed as is, that would help you tremendously. Would the word, if we remove the word fill and replace it with post, would that still help you with the efficiency? or the same equal efficiency, whether it's fill or post,
Post subject to council
subject to
approval.
council approval.
Yeah.
Correct.
The wheels will be started into motion.
Right, so what we would just do is we would post subject to council making changes to the job description, and so just putting a note in there that the job description may be subject to change.
Because really, how often does a job description change when it comes to council? I mean, typically
Lately, I've been making a lot of changes because.
after council,
But no council changing them.
Oh, council changing them? Yeah, I think
Right.
you guys aren't usually changing them.
Right.
Usually it's minor changes of,
right.
like, where if there's apostrophes in the wrong spot or something like
Well,
that.
and,
So, yeah.
and I want to give Hope kudos for coming up with the compromise of, is there verbiage that we can substitute? Is there something that, because like I said, that's why I said earlier, I'm willing to listen, and so for me personally, I feel very comfortable with leaving in the no major changes, but substituting the word fill with the word post, where it may say shall be authorized to post such vacancies as needed, subject to council approval. That's what I would feel very comfortable with, and that's something that I could support 100% going forward. I mean, I'm just one, so I don't know how anyone else feels about that, but
Maybe we could get the best of both worlds in there, where if there's literally no changes, you can just hire. And if there's minor changes, then you can post, and then we can approve it later. Would that be amiable?
no, I still want post.
Well, that's not different, though. So no changes, hire. Any minor changes, she can post, but we approve it later.
It's different.
All right. I got a feeling that this is going to be, if this goes forward, a non-consent item.
Of course it is.
So Jim, you're going to be the guy here.
You're in the
So-
middle.
Well, the only thing I wanted to say is I had my hand up about 20 minutes ago, but nobody saw it, so.
I'm right here, just
No, I didn't want to hit you. That doesn't look good.
kind of
ahead.
wanted to.
The only comment I want to make is about what Chief Hayes said, because I think it's important, and it covers all the jobs that he made a comment about the quality of the position that he was talking about, and I think it's important that if we enhance the quality of the work, and there's some way to exude that to the applicant, to me that's impressive. That's important that we're going for an excellent job description, and it may be a higher type of situation we're trying to accomplish here. So thanks, Mr. Hayes. I think that's an excellent way of looking at employment. So what's up to me?
Well, it sounds like staff, it would help if they were able to post the position, and the filling immediately with the no change thing is not of much value. Is that fair?
Well, the other way of doing this is you could approve this based on the comments that everybody said. And it's always open for discussion if it doesn't work.
What my thoughts was to rescind my motion with the amendment, then Diane could make another one that would post it, would change the word fill to post, and then it would go forward probably on the non-consent, and then council can weigh in on it.
And Dan, you would be fine leaving the word major in?
If it's just posting and council does, I mean,
Right.
like I said, I just don't want to give up the ability for council to, I mean, we talked about budgetary impacts, but sometimes in the future, things could be different, where the role might be something that we want to have a say in. And this is not just this year, this is a resolution, so it's changing how the city does business going forward. I think it's important that we get it right. If this helps, I want things to be quicker and better for the city. If it doesn't if it does not, removes council's ability to have that sort of major, that input and approval on positions, and we can fill positions more quickly, I guess I think that's better than what we have, so I would be likely to support that. And I'm hearing that that's a preferable option with staff.
So will you two take back your motion and your second?
I guess
That's-
I was
that's-
kinda looking for.
that's up to you two.
I guess I was,
If you do, I'll make a motion. Because I can't have two motions on the floor.
I made the motion, I think you seconded it.
Okay, I remove my second.
All right, I will remove my motion.
I will make a motion that we forward the Resolution 18-2020 to council next Tuesday, but I will amend the resolution so it reads, the third line, the end of the second line where it reads, it will now read, city staff shall be authorized to post such vacancies as needed, subject to council approval.
All right, there's a motion on the floor.
Second.
Motion by Alder Wolf, second by Alder Olson, for Resolution 18-2020 with the amended word changing fill to post, subject to council approval. Is there any discussion? Hope this is workable. All right, and I think we'd like this on the non-consent agenda, but all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Item passes.
One quick follow-up question for Hope. So if this goes to council, when this goes to council next Tuesday, Hope, and if this were to pass as presented, my question to you is, does this give you as much efficiency time-wise to what was done last year with police and fire? Or is this slower in any way?
We will still be able to post them, but it'll still delay if we have to make changes to the job description. And so that part will still be delayed because if we have changes to the job description, we will have to make a notation in the actual posting that will say, make a caveat that'll say the posting or the job description is subject to change. We are putting something in front of the council for changes because they won't actually know what the full job description will actually say.
Okay.
And so that could be problematic.
I'll withhold my question to Amanda. Dan?
Slightly amend, I think, the answer provided by Hope, especially with police and fire positions where there is hiring lists created. The practice, even though we have a list and there's a vacancy, is still to come back to council to get approval to fill the position, with or without a change in position description. With the change, what would occur, even with no changes to the position description, and if we had a full hiring list, the PFC approved, we still have to come to council to approve. Even if we post that position, we can't hire for that position until the council approves it.
Okay. So my question to
It doesn't
Amanda-
actually solve, I think, a whole lot of problems there in the police and fire.
Okay, so my question then to Amanda is, or maybe to Hope is, would it help then, and I realize it's not on the agenda, and you can tell me whether or not we can talk about this or not if you cut me off quickly. But would it be helpful if we were to reinstate what we did last year, July through the end of the year? Where would that help you?
That only
police and
affects
fire.
police and fire. And we're really looking at, all of the department heads are looking at having something in place for all budgeted positions.
Okay. Okay.
All right, Amanda.
My only response to that is also, moving forward, you can put an end on a resolution. They don't have to be indefinitely But if you were going to do like something like that, again, I would encourage you to do a limited resolution. Just again, to have that paper trail and documentation.
Okay.
All right, well, we voted on that. I guess between now and council, if anybody has any suggested language that maybe could be discussed at council, I'm open. Again, I think everybody's goal here is to try to make this a better system and make it easier for staff and make it easier for Onalaska to meet its staffing needs going forward. So, all right, so,
Could use the council's orator to clear that up. And anybody could be the orator if they want, because obviously, time is of no meaning to anybody. We can just go on forever if we like, so. That was a joke.
Okay.
thank you, Jim.
Thanks,
Item
guys.
8, update from Human Resources on staff vacancies. Hope,
Did we vote?
I thought we did.
I don't think
Oh.
so, no.
Oh,
We did not vote.
So nothing,
went to discussion.
nothing's happened.
We voted.
Did we vote?
Okay.
We voted.
Yeah, no, we voted.
We voted.
We did?
Do we need to,
Have Diane
ayes.
made the motion.
This is what happens when we talk a long time about something. I do not remember. Did we vote?
Yeah, we did. I'm pretty sure we did.
I'm pretty sure because I flipped my page.
Amanda?
Okay, sorry.
All right,
You did.
I heard it.
I guess we could revote if it makes you feel better, but I think we're on item 8.
Why don't you go ahead for me?
We're on item 8. Hope, any updates on staff vacancies?
Yeah, so right now, we are still down an officer. We are hoping to, we have a current opening to fill that vacancy, and we will be doing that on April 2nd with the Police and Fire Commission. We have posted the lieutenant position in the fire department, and that will also be interviewed on April 2nd with the Police and Fire Commission, as well as the professional panel. We also, as you'll see later on in the agenda, we have 2 firefighter vacancies. We just had 2 staff members go to La Crosse, and their last days will be next week. And we have one contingent offer out, and so we are working on to complete the remaining of the background investigation and then the physical agility, psychological, and medical examination before that person can start. And we have then the administrative assistant paralegal position, which closes on Friday. So we will do any interviews for that position. So we have several positions open. That does not include the 3 additional positions for both police and fire that were budgeted in the budget. That basically we have exhausted our eligibility list for both departments, and we have a posting right now for the fire department to establish another eligibility list. So between numerous projects and recruitment, I'm overwhelmed.
Thanks, Hope.
Thank you for the report. We appreciate that. Item 9, review and consideration of out-of-state travel for Corey Yankovic and Jared Benson to attend FDIC, which is the Fire Department Instructor Conference. It's not to be confused with the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Hands-on training evolutions with full conference in Indianapolis, Indiana from April 23rd through April 24th, 2020.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Diane to approve. Is there any discussion? Billy?
Yes, we put in Lieutenant Yankovic's name as the second fill because of the truck committee. This has to do with the purchase of the new Quint, which the Common Council budgeted for with equipment as well. FDIC is the largest fire conference in the nation, which is held in Indianapolis with over approximately 50,000 attendees. All vendors, anybody that attends these conferences in the fire service are there. But we did put Lieutenant Yankovic's name in, but just for the record, firefighter EMT Jim Netwall will be going along with firefighter EMT Jared Benson. So I just wanted to make the record that it'll be Jim Netwall and not Corey Yankovic.
Okay. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Right, how shall we consider this?
I made a motion to approve.
Yeah, I already.
We need to amend that to say with Jim Netwell? All right. Without any further discussion, all those in favor of approving the out-of-state travel for Jim Netwell and Jared Benson, please say aye.
Aye.
Travel is approved. Item 10, review and consideration of authorization to fill positions. Do we want to do these individually, or can I?
Up to you.
All right. 3 positions, full-time firefighter EMT, part-time community risk reduction and outreach specialist, and part-time office clerical support and inspection.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Jim,
Second for discussion.
second by Diane.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Discussion.
I'm sorry, is it 10A we're talking about?
Yeah.
Oh.
We did them all, but I think we would maybe want to approve each of them
Yes, one
individually.
at a time. So I will second 10A, yes.
All right. Discussion on 10A.
So this is to approve 2 full-time firefighter EMT positions, as we have 2 vacancies.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor of approving the 2 vacant positions for full-time firefighter / EMT, please say aye.
Aye.
Those are approved. Item B, part-time community risk reduction and outreach specialist. This is a new position?
This is a new position. The job description is in the packet. So basically, what we have right now is we have part-time staff members in the fire department right now, but we really haven't had job descriptions that we've had created for them to move into other positions. And so what the chief has been working on is really to, as some of these people maybe get closer to where they really physically don't want to do the firefighter EMT, but maybe they have value to do other types of positions, that we could have them doing more community outreach, they could be doing media relations, they could do inspections, things like that. That we've created job descriptions for that, and then it basically just taking current staff that we have on the department already and moving them in some of these positions as they're getting to a point where they still have value within the organization, but they just maybe physically don't want to do the firefighter EMT anymore. I don't know if Chief has anything else he wants to add, but.
I don't know if it's just missing from my packet, but I didn't have a P10. Was it just mine?
Or the,
It's the white.
oh, so confused.
Oh, P11A.
Yeah.
Okay. I get confused easily.
It's a carryover
Billy,
from
did-
A and J.
Do you have anything to?
I'm here for questions from you guys. I think Hope articulated it, that we have individuals, keep in mind, we have had generic job descriptions for decades that are firefighter EMT. Our organization performs more than just firefighter EMT, just as police department. They do investigations, they do DARE, they do school resources. Those job descriptions have not existed in the fire department. I am trying to bring us up to current day. So a community risk reduction and outreach specialist puts us into a category to where we have individuals who may want to work with us that are fire inspectors that can go out and do fire inspections. They are a part of the part-time, not the full-time group that the council has budgeted, but they fit into the part-time employee budget. We have individuals that may do public education, whereas we could hire a teacher who is more skilled and educated in childhood development or senior development in education. We could have somebody that come in that could work with our organization that could do those types of things. Individuals that know more about media, marketing, social media, that can handle that, because as the fire chief, I am doing the social media for the City of Onalaska Fire Department. And I have a lot of other stuff to do. So I would rather have somebody that is skilled in developing videos, that can develop recruitment videos, that can do graphic and design without having to necessarily contract outside the organization, but they could be a part of the organization in this particular position that does not necessarily fit in a firefighter EMT job description, which has only existed with the Onalaska Fire Department. So that was the purpose of me revising, well, it wasn't even revision, it was development of this particular job description. I'll be coming before F&P next month with a new job description as well, which we'll talk about next month, to really hone in on another position and service that we provide that there's no job description for, that through statute we should have. So I'm working through this as slow as I can, but this is it's part of our part-time program. It's not a full-time new position whatsoever. So it's managed within our part-time budget that the Common Council has approved.
All right, so there's really no budgetary impact, you're just,
No, sir, there is not. This is a job description to place individuals within a defined job description.
got it. Diane?
Don't leave. Thank you. Is there anyone in particular who is doing this work now within the department?
We have 2 individuals that are currently with the organization that have expressed interest that they want to remain with the organization, but necessarily with their age and, just say age, they don't want to leave the organization, but they still have value to the organization. But if they only exist in a firefighter EMT job description but can't perform those job functions, and without naming names,
Sure.
I don't
No.
want to say that publicly.
No.
They would still want to be a part of the Onalaska Fire Department and still have value and service, but we need to define a job description where they can fit. So yes, there are 2. We had an individual who was with the organization for some time, but he was not necessarily a firefighter EMT, but he was doing a lot of our social media, our marketing, but it did not fit in anywhere. So as Hope and I have been working together, and we're kind of partners here to try to define, let's make things right, let's define things how they should be, and I think it makes this organization more reputable and more credible.
And as a follow-up, Hope, the grade 6, 7, what is that pay range?
So that is, I recall that was like $12 or $13, and that really just depends on certifications.
Okay.
And so depending on if they have, because we have preferred a lot of the certifications. So if they have the certifications, then they'll go to the higher rate. If they don't, then they'll go to the lower rate. So that's kind of where we put those based on, yeah.
Okay. Great, thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right. No other discussion? All those in favor of approving the part-time community risk reduction and outreach specialist position, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It is approved. Item C, part-time office clerical support and inspection. I don't know if this is a Hope or a Katie thing.
Well, Katie did a memo about how it went.
That's, yeah, farther down. Way down.
Behind the job description.
Yeah. That's why we're getting confused.
But seeing how Katie's going to get up and with her laptop and everything, I'm going to let her like speak.
It's a new firefighter. I didn't know that she was holding down 2 jobs here. Good for you, Katie.
Oh, yeah.
So the city's inspection department is anticipated to have some retirements likely coming up in the next couple of months. One of them is our anticipated clerical support at this point, and we want to facilitate the best transfer of knowledge for what we have today. We have people that have worked in our inspection department for decades, and the best thing we can do is to facilitate a retirement is to try and make that as a seamless transition as possible. Therefore, I am requesting the creation of a new part-time position that is based off of the existing office assistant position that we have in our department today, to allow them to train and learn before that knowledge leaves us on a permanent basis. It's potential that in the future to come back to the council either refill the current position that we have as a vacancy, either to extend that person the opportunity to go from part-time to full-time, or leave it as a part-time position, depending what the will of the common council is. Also, to note that there options for the replacement of an inspector, as we have 2 folks that may be retiring very shortly. I'm proposing that GEC at this time step in to complete permanent inspections on an as-needed basis until we come up with a final plan for replacement. Are there any questions?
Yes, so if I'm just kind of paraphrasing, we want to add another position and allow that position to be trained by the current position, and then when that current position retires, we'll have a more trained position that would just potentially maybe turn that into the full-time position that was vacated by the retirement.
Correct.
All right,
If
that's reasonable.
that's what the council decides to do.
And then the second, you mentioned that with the inspectors that we're looking at outsourcing that through GEC?
So the city currently utilizes GEC, General Engineering Company, to perform residential inspections on the behalf of our inspectors. We have also contracted with them as needed to perform commercial inspections, and they have stepped in with us when we had staff unable to complete those inspections. GEC did step in for us. So what I'm recommending in the intermediary, when that person decides to retire, that we continue to utilize GEC on an as-needed basis until we decide if we're going to refill the position or what we're going to do. So, we have a permanent plan in place.
So we're building succession into this. That's a good thing. With adding the position, what's the budgetary difference going to be? I mean, do we have the funds?
And I don't have the exact dollar amount, but with the anticipated retirements that are coming up in the next couple of months, those unexpended dollars will be used to fill the part-time position. I do not know what a grade 10 part-time wage is off the top of my head.
But we think that the retirement
Absolutely.
will cover that, okay.
So it will not be full-time and there'll be no benefit.
All right.
I move that we approve the item 10C, the part-time office clerical support inspection position. We give authorization to fill that position, and also allow planning to have GEC to complete permit inspections on an as-needed basis at this time.
Second.
Motion by Diane, second by Jim. Is there any further questions? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the office clerical support inspection and allowing GEC to fulfill as needed per planning's request? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Katie.
All right, so now we need to talk about item 11, the community, well, we've already covered these, but I guess they're just job descriptions, so we need to talk about that.
Yes, you
Okay.
need to approve the job descriptions now. We've talked about authorization to fill the positions, but we have the job descriptions now that we just need to approve.
All right, so item 11A, the community risk reduction and outreach specialist. I mean, Billy, you touched on this already, and it's in the packet, but are there any other questions? Or I guess we should start with the motion.
I will move that we approve item 11A, the community risk reduction and outreach specialist position as presented this evening.
Second.
Motion by Diane, second by Jim. Any discussion?
Just a quick question that I have for Hope. Like, where did this job description come from?
Essentially, Billy created it. So,
He's the creator.
I knew I'd come back up. So we were trying to identify a catch-all without having to bring 10 different job descriptions. So individuals that could fall into this for our CERT team. I can't be the leader of the CERT team all the time. I need somebody that can handle that. Our full-time firefighters, that's not a function that they can do all the time, but we needed somebody to be able to handle that. Develop a Citizens Fire Academy, which has been a vision of mine since I came here. Public education, somebody that can go out to senior facilities or childcare facilities or schools that can handle that, because as our staffing is limited full-time and our call volume continues to increase, we actually have to leave schools where we're serving lunch or doing pub ed events, and we have to leave, and we don't get back to them because they have a schedule just like we do. So finding people that can do pub ed. Fire inspections, because we are mandated by the state for our 2% rule to get our 2% dues back. We have to inspect every commercial occupancy in the city twice a year until we deem the ones that, well, these only have to be done once a year, but we haven't gotten to that point yet. Having individuals that have certification and have flexibility part-time that can go out and do fire inspections to relieve our full-time responsibilities. So we're trying to develop a community risk reduction, because that's what the fire service is about, is reducing risk to the community. So trying to find a alternative catch-all job description. So I've utilized about 10 different job descriptions from across the country, organizations similar to our size, Phoenix, Atlanta, ones that I'm familiar with, and combined it all together to match our format. And so to answer your question, I did this.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am.
Jim, he's the orator.
Yes, he is.
He's pretty great. All right. Well, let's vote on approving any other discussion? All right. All those in favor of approving the part-time job description, or the new job description for the community risk reduction and outreach specialist, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And then now let's, the job description for the office clerical support and inspection.
Motion to approve the office clerical support inspection position.
Second.
Motion by Diane, seconded by Jim to approve the change in the office clerical support inspection job description.
Part of my motion, I do want to include its part-time grade 10.
So noted. Is there any other discussion?
I just want to thank staff and HR and Eric for having the foresight, because I know that's one thing that we had talked about as council, is about the succession plan, and this just makes us more efficient and makes us look better to the community, and that's who we serve. So thank you for continuing this, and I know we'll be having more talks in the future. So thank you for doing this.
And it is really nice that if you have a lot of knowledge over decades of experience, that you don't lose that, and I think it's a better way to do business for the city. So, all right, I think we need to vote on this. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That passes. Item 12, closed session. To consider a motion to convene in closed session under Section 19.85, Parent 1, Parent E of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business, whether competitive or bargaining reasons required a closed session. Specifically, request for reductions, forgiveness of truancy forfeitures in the IAFF International Association of Firefighters Local 127. And to consider a motion to convene in closed session under Section 19.85, Parent 1, Parent G of the Wisconsin statutes for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is likely to become involved. IAFF International Association of Firefighters Local 127 prohibited practice complaint regarding part-time emergency medical technicians. If any action is required in open session as a result of the closed session, the committee will reconvene in open session to take necessary action and/or continue on the printed agenda.
Motion to go into closed.
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Diane to go into closed session. All those in favor, or do we do roll call?
Diane, aye.
Jim, I.
Dan, aye. We are in closed session.
Thank you, Jared.
Nighty night.
Good night. Oh, Fred, where are you going, Fred? Can Fred go? No, Fred can't go. Court? 2 minutes? 2 minutes? We've been here for an hour.
Yeah.
I still got
I like to get a drink.
$3,000 the orders to put in before I go to bed. It's all in a day's work.
I've had a long day. I went to A&J and I got car dealer. Everybody gets their tax returns, so like I got financing coming up my ears. Fortunately, I think it's kind of stopped after 7. I guess car dealers have to go home at some point.
There you go. Take those back with you. Bye.